This episode of Bright Hearth is brought to you by Indigo Sundries Soap Company, Joe Garrissey with Backwards Planning Financial, Live Oak Integrative Health, A Well-Worn Story, Gray Toad Tallow, and by our supporters at patreon.com.
Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love is strong as death. Jealousy is fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. Song of Solomon 8:6-7.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bright Hearth. Babe, how you doing?
We are good.
We are good.
It's been a very, very long time.
Yeah, guys, we need to explain our absence, okay? Because I think when this episode comes out,
thinking about this the
it'll
other
be
day.
just over a month
Okay,
from when we last published.
but we were in our house, our other house.
Yeah, and well, and even the thing is, the last one I did with Pastor Khan.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's really been about 6 weeks since
So
we
we've
recorded together.
moved twice.
Yeah,
We've celebrated 3 family birthdays.
Yeah.
We had the conference.
We went out of town for a
We
week.
went out of town, and now we're here
And now we're here.
pitting cherries. So today is the kickoff of harvest season in the Sauvé household.
Yes.
So we've done a lot of things in the last few weeks.
It was wild. I think
was crazy.
We mentioned that we were renting out our house that we had built, and then because we had 3 kids when we built it, and then we doubled. We had 6 kids. Have 6 kids now. So we ran out of room. We didn't have a garage, a bunch of other stuff. So we needed to move along, which is great when interest rates are at 7% and above. That's right when you want to move.
We should talk about all of this sometime in depth.
Let us know, guys, if
Through
you want to hear.
The thought process behind all of this.
Yeah. So the Lord was kind, and
He
we
has
were
been
able
very kind.
to find a house, exactly what we wanted, a house built before the year 2000. And it's got a creek in the backyard. It is really a wonderful place. We're very, very thankful. So thank you guys for your patience. It's been crazy. Lexi, before we continue, I wanted to hear, what did you think about the conference? We met so many of you, so thank you for everybody who said hi, and some of you guys were very, very encouraging in your feedback about how this podcast has been helpful to you.
Yeah, it was
in
cool
your
to
family,
hear
your marriages.
stories.
So, what was your perspective on the conference as an observer?
Well, I didn't get to go last year, so I did. I sat through, I think, yours and Pastor Sumter's year, but it was amazing. It was amazing. Everyone did a good job. I didn't get to listen to everybody, but everybody that I did talk to that I trust, who did sit through pretty much everything, they said out of all the different conferences they've traveled to, they felt like this was the best for all of the content, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think you guys did a good job of asking people to talk about very specific topics. That's what's always interesting to me is I usually think up a list of questions I want to ask somebody, like, ooh, what do they think about this? And I feel like that's what you guys did for each of the speakers, which made it way better than just them rehashing like a book they wrote or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the way that we handle conferences at New Christian Press.
Yeah, you explained this to me and I was like, oh, okay.
Because we've been to conferences, and one of the things I'm always, like you said, that I always find to be tiresome is I've read the book. I'm here because I like the person. I want to hear from them. But then there's a real general topic, and it's kind of like the last thing they worked on or wrote, the last book. And so what we've done the last 2 conferences, and especially this one, is first of all, we don't pick speakers based on who has the biggest platform. We're not just like, oh, could we get John MacArthur to come out? Because that would sell conference tickets. What we do is we say, what's the topic? This year is building Christian boroughs, building thick Christian communities, and a very particular type.
Yeah.
And so we said, who do we want to hear from on this? We said, well, we want to hear from George Grant, Stephen Wolfe, Joe Rigney. And then we kind of went down our list, and George Grant wanted to, but he was booked, maybe next year.
Oh.
But Dr. Rigney was able to come out. We said, we really want to hear from Dr. Stephen Wolfe because his book, The Case for Christian Nationalism, and his work has been so influential to us on a lot of this stuff, really solid scholar in that area. We wanted to hear from Chase Davis, a pastor out in Colorado who's been kicked out of Acts 29 and kind of his struggle in a lot of similar things we've been through in terms of reforming local church. We wanted to hear from our friend Joel Webbin, Pastor Joel Webbin of Right Response Ministries. because he just takes a lot of heat, but he speaks the truth boldly, clearly. He's just one of those guys that I love.
He's a good friend.
He's a good friend.
That's what I realized listening to him. I was like, wow, I'm so thankful this is one of my husband's friends.
Yeah, he has our back. Like he's found excuses to be in Ogden like 4 of the last 5 months, and we're here for it. We love Joel. So we wanted to hear from Joel.
Tell me next time he's in town so I can make him an old-fashioned. I owe him an old-fashioned still.
It's always like I'm in my office, and then all of a sudden Joel walks
in. There's
like,
Joel.
My guy, with like a dip or a Zen in his mouth. And then,
oh my gosh.
So here's the thing, guys. You can listen to all the talks on our Patreon. So if you join the Bright Hearth Patreon at any tier, we have a playlist where you can go and watch or listen in all the talks. I gave the opening talk, setting the course for the event. And then just some absolutely phenomenal talks from Dr. Joe Rigney, Dr. Stephen Wolf, J. Chase Davis, Joel Webbin. Pastor Burkholder gave an excellent charge at the end. There was a panel that Pastor Kahn led.
Yeah, I heard that was really good. That was one I didn't make.
What a fun panel that was. Also very helpful.
Yeah.
On all kinds of issues, raising from like everything from the Allie Beth Stuckey controversy that's kind of flown around lately to Christian nationalism to the Jewish question.
The Christian nationalism topic was so interesting and helpful.
Yeah.
And I definitely think women should not shy away from listening to that or reading his book.
Yeah.
I want to read his book now, but...
So I never actually finished explaining this, I realized. We pick speakers that we want to hear from on a topic, but then we actually assign them a title and a paragraph length or more description of exactly kind of, here's what we would like to hear. And then we say, is that something you want to talk about, first of all? And what that's helped us do, I think, is make sure that when the speakers come, they understand, like, we're not asking them to give a general background and fill everybody in on all their work they've already done. We're going to assume people have read it, and we want them to go deep on one or two or three particular aspects that we're really fascinated by.
Yeah.
So Dr. Wolf spoke on the perils of multiculturalism and why America really, historically, was an Anglo-Protestant nation, culturally speaking, and then why that matters for today and how we should think about our national identity as Christians in the United States of America. And it was really, really helpful. Dr. Rigney talked about the logistics of Christian boroughs and how to protect Christian boroughs from emotional sabotage. Really good. So anyway, Joel Webbin talked about why 500 people in the audience should move to Ogden, which literally
talked
he
about
said
way more than that.
But he talked about righteous balkanization. And he's experienced some of that. So anyway, really, really fun conference. We had, believe it or not, so last year, 2023, we had about like 300 to 400 people, including our church, present at any given time. Usually about 300 people in the room. This year, we had over 1,000 people in the room. And if you want to hear some crazy stories about things that happened at the high school that we used.
I was going to say.
And the opposition that we ran into. Are we going
to talk about this?
Ideologically, listen to the next King's Hall, because we're going to do a whole debrief, and we'll tell those stories. They were wild. We had lesbians and people, trying to get us canceled. People were putting swastikas on stuff and trying to frame us.
Probably won't go back.
I don't think we would be able to.
That's what I mean.
The principal's asking for an apology. Anyway, so go listen to the King's Hall.
Hey, what did you think about your concert? It was so good.
What did you? I mean, I did it. We didn't have monitors. I gave a concert of some of my psalms that I've released, some that I haven't released, Hearth songs that I've released, and then also a few original songs I haven't released yet as well. And my friends Beth and Aaron, who played on Hearth songs, a married couple. Aaron plays upright bass, amazing.
They're awesome.
Beth sang on 5 of the 6 songs on Hearth songs, and then some of the Even Dragon psalms as well.
You guys sounded so good when you were rehearsing in here, and I was out there with the kids. I thought at first, I was like, why are they listening to the CD first? And then I realized, I'm like, they're playing. It's so good.
You're sweet. So yeah, I got to do a
great.
live concert. I couldn't really hear it because we didn't have monitors, and I was behind the speakers, obviously. So it was almost hard to hear anything at all from my perspective, but people say it went okay.
It was great.
I had so much fun doing that.
It was great.
So next year, guys, tickets are already for sale for 2025, and the lowest prices you're going to get are right now. It's like the second week of June. So if you want to come out to Ogden next year, my goal is to have 2,000 people. We've got a couple of venues we're looking at to make sure we can fit everybody. And really, we just want to make this an absolutely enjoyable time for everybody. We did a great feast in the park after.
Yeah, that was fun.
After the church service, we had close to 800 people on Sunday worshiping as well.
I wasn't there for that part, but
because of sickness.
yes.
But that was wild as well, singing together, worshiping together. And then we had a barbecue in the park right up the street from our church there after the Sunday service, and had, again, it was just really refreshing and encouraging. Love it.
Yep.
And one thing that we did launch at I know there's a lot of housekeeping, but this is like our life. We care a lot about this stuff. I hope you guys care about this too. This is really what we put our back into, building as a family and also as a church and New Christendom Press. But New Christendom Press we launched our very first book.
Yep.
At the conference.
Great. It's great.
And it is a book by Pastor Zachary Garris, PCA pastor. Obviously got his theological degrees. He also has a JD, so he has a law degree.
JD? Oh, interesting.
Juris Doctor degree. So
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah. He's a very clear writer, scholar, and he wrote a great book for us that I actually think Bright Hearth listeners in particular would love.
Yeah, there's definitely been parts of it. I thought immediately going into it, I'd be like, oh, 100% agree. But there's definitely been parts of it that I'm like having to stop and like think about Scripture. Is this true based on Scripture, even if I don't like what it's saying right now?
The book is called Honor Thy Fathers, Recovering the Anti-Feminist Theology of the Reformers. And basically it's a 2-part book. It's really clear. It's scholarly, but it's not dense and impossible to read. No, it's not. Anybody could read this book, pretty much. The first half of the book, Pastor Garris goes through and basically lays out the historic Reformed and Protestant view of the roles of women in the home, the church, and the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And also men as well, and how that relates to these different offices. And then in the second half, he compares that teaching to the state of the modern Reformed church, especially people who claim to be confessional, and asks the question basically, have they departed in their practice and doctrine from the reformers that they claim to follow, basically the men who wrote the Westminster Confession and led the Reformation? We're talking about men like John Calvin, William Gouge, Vermigli, all kinds of guys.
And he's not saying, take my word for it, this is what they believed. It's just quotes from them.
Exhaustively cited.
Yes.
So
much work.
And one of the reasons I think this is such an important book for us and why Bright Hearth listeners would benefit from it is because some of the time what Lexi and I say in the show, when we talk about what God made a man and a woman to be and to do in the home and in the church and in the state and the culture, it's controversial. And people often say, because we say a woman should
I have some
marry.
examples.
Go ahead, yeah.
Of stuff, like one of the things in there that he talked about with modesty and things that, like, we've gotten questions before where a wife will say, like, well, my husband wants me to wear this because he likes it and it's immodest. Should I submit? And he tackles that in that book where they, the reformers said, no, he should not be causing you to sin.
Right.
He needs to renew his affection. So it was very, very practical to like household questions like that.
And we're often saying things like that where, hey, it's normative for a woman to marry and have children and keep her household, and she shouldn't be aspiring to teach doctrine in the church. She, even the older women teach younger women to be keepers at home, love their husbands. That doesn't mean that generally we want to put women in teaching roles in Sunday school classes, teaching through Ephesians, and or that women should be political commentators and out there in the public square generally doing this kind of like pugilistic stuff. And women shouldn't be senators and congressmen and presidents and police officers. And so a lot of the time what we get when we talk about these issues is things like, wow, you guys are fill in the blank with some recent crazy movement of like, for example, we hear a lot, oh, these guys are those hyper-patriarchy red pill vision forum guys who are just all about Gothard. And I'm like, first of all, I'm not hyper red pill. I wouldn't consider myself red pill at all. When I went and spoke at a Red Pill Manosphere conference, I basically told them all to repent and trust the Lord. Yeah,
you were way stronger than I thought you were going to be on that.
I've never read or watched a single minute or word of Gothard. Our point is, what we're promoting theologically and culturally is classical Reformed and Protestant patriarchy, which isn't new, but it's very old. We're saying, or aiming to say, the same things that the men who wrote our confessions and founded our stream of theological and Christian faith, that we're saying what they said, and that the moderns have departed, the complementarians and and the egalitarians, and they've departed in many ways. And so they think we're radical. We actually think they're radical.
Yeah.
So this book is important because it just shows the receipts. Pastor Garrett shows
that's a good way to put
we
it.
didn't make this stuff up.
It's not like a modern ideology that we're suddenly following. It is
Exactly
a principle of truth based on objective reality.
So we have a limited hardcover run. I don't know if we're going to do another hardcover run. We'll have a paperback at some point in the future, as well as an Audible and audiobook version and Kindle and all of that. Did like e-reader version, but this is going to be the best version. It's a hardback. It has a really cool custom dust jacket,
cool.
A gold foil stamped Medusa head to represent the death of feminism, which is amazing.
Did you guys get Rigney a copy of this?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
We told him we stole your Medusa thing.
That's what I was thinking.
Without asking. So it's gold foil spine, really nice hardcover edition. We had the book special printed. This isn't like an Amazon print or something like that. We had this special printed, sent to us.
I'm impressed you guys are standing on your principles
Yeah.
there. I heard that little combo between... Anyways.
Yeah. So we're actually selling it only on our website right now. And that means that instead of giving money to Amazon, we're actually employing some like a family in our church right now to fulfill orders, which is cool. So I'm excited for you guys to get your hands on it. newchristendompress.com/fathers. That's in the description, or just go to New Christendom Press and it's right there. And you can pick up a copy. We're shipping in the U.S. right now, working on figuring out international shipping. But pick up a copy for you, your pastors. We do have discounts on 5 books or more. And if you want to buy a case or something like that for a bookstore or your whole church or something like that, a men's group, then reach out. We have an email address on the page to give volume discount. We want to make it helpful for as many people as possible. So, yeah. And then lastly, I did want to say, Lexy has a Substack. Is that what it's called?
I do.
Lexy's been regularly writing it in the marginalia.
Trying to regularly write now.
Yeah, which is really fun. So if you want to go subscribe there, you can see she's doing a lot of fun and helpful writing. And it's been a good discipline from what I understand.
Yes, it is.
Are you tired of not feeling well and of having your doctor treat your symptoms without taking the time to investigate what's really going on? Rebecca Belch owns Live Oak Integrative Health and is passionate about helping women and families achieve the health that God designed our bodies to have. She has been a critical care and labor and delivery nurse for 20 years and is a licensed practitioner of functional medicine. Her goal is to address the root causes of dysfunction in your body and to help you give your body what it needs so that you can create a legacy of health that extends to your children and grandchildren. She provides a wide range of testing options to uncover your underlying health issues, such as fatigue, weight gain, and gut problems. She then works with you to develop a plan that focuses on nutrition, hormone balance, and long-term habits to promote enduring health. She also specializes in health for women who will become or currently are pregnant. This time is often overlooked and is the most important window to create generational health. Contact her right now for a $50 discount on any of her service options. You can do this on her website, liveoakintegrativehealth.com, and that link will be in the description for you. If you have a young family like me, you work hard every day to ensure you care for your wife and kids. Providing for a young family is challenging, with rising costs, and it doesn't look like things are going to change in the future. Maybe you've thought like I have, I wish I'd started investing years ago. My family would be in a better financial position. As they say about trees, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Don't let the benefit of time go to waste on your financial planning for retirement or inheritance for your generations. Joe Garrissey with Backwards Planning Financial has been working with us to make the best plan for our family. He's a Christian who works with one of the largest and most trusted financial service companies in the world. He's been helping Lexy and I work towards our financial goals and helps us navigate the complexities of the markets. Whether you have millions in assets or you're just starting to invest, Joe Garrissey can help you reach your goals to grow the kingdom and leave a good legacy for your generations. Visit backwardspanningfinancial.com, that's backwardspanningfinancial.com, or call 615-767-2555 to speak with Joe to prepare for the future. The testimonials presented may not be representative of the experience of other clients and are not a guarantee of future performance or success. If you're like us, the changing seasons wreak havoc on your skin, leaving us in constant search of a healthy product that actually works. Well, they're onto something at Gray Toad Tallow. We're talking about a natural, organic option packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K to moisturize your skin. The minimal ingredients are whipped into a velvety balm and have been known to soothe all kinds of skincare needs, from psoriasis, eczema, and dry skin to sunburns. Speaking of sunburns, if you want to avoid sunburn altogether, we are excited to introduce their tallow-based sunscreen. Sunscreen that's actually good for your skin. They also heard from the men, and though all can use it, they did create a lighter scent using sandalwood. So check out graytoadtallow.com and use code BRIGHT15, that's all caps, BRIGHT15, for 15% off your order, and all of that will be in the description for you. Excellent. Well, let's get to, I knew that was going to take a little bit of time, so, but I want you guys to like get from us that these are the things we're building. We care deeply about these things. The conference and the book and Lord willing, publishing future books. We really want, as a publishing house, to not just make great podcasts, but also to make theological and cultural and practical works that will help your whole family.
I think it's an important mark of Christian culture that we're not just people of audio, but that we're people of the written word. I think that is more of a lasting type of culture that can be passed down.
Yeah. We've had deep philosophical discussions as a board of New Christendom Press on the tiers of content, like what is the highest form of content on down. It's why we say like short video is the lowest, then video in general, then audio. I think audio is a more apt medium for the type of content we're doing, because you can actually be helped by audio content while you do your duties.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You can garden, you can drive your long haul route as a man, you can fix your car, you can work out while you're listening to audio. But video is you're sitting, reading next down, and then face-to-face.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Face-to-face interaction, obviously, all the way through down to...
You meant reading was below audio.
No, I actually mean I was going from
wait
the least...
a second.
I was going from the least to the greatest. I did that in a confusing way. But yeah, that's... Anyway.
We don't need to have the philosophical discussion now.
No, I was just saying we've had many of those. So that's shaped, like, for example, why we do a lot of audio and why we try to be one of the... In terms of the production quality and the content. Do an excellent job.
That makes sense.
Because we think audio actually
And it's
fits.
okay for Christians to do an excellent job at making things. Imagine that.
And I'm not dunking on video. Video is great. Video has its place, and we do video as well. But let's talk about marriage, because as of today, we have been married. How long?
13 years. Wish it was 17.
In one day. Wish it was 17. Why? So
actually, would it have been 18?
When?
Like if I could have married you as soon as I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were together 5 years before.
When did you want to marry me?
When I was 13.
You were 13?
So
the state of Utah even would have frowned upon that, probably.
Yeah. Bummer.
Dang. We could have... Think of how many babies we could have had by now. If we were married at 14 and 13. I don't know if it would have worked. I think it would have worked. We could have done it, babe. Anybody else, this is radically unwise, but we could have made it.
15 is when we started dating. I was almost 16, like a few weeks away.
Wow. We were together for 4 years before we got married, including engagement.
It was 5 years before we got married.
It was 5 years. Well, I was 16, and then we were 20.
No, it was 4, I guess. My math is off.
It was like 2.5 and 1.5. 2.5 of dating, 1.5 of engagement. So our 13th anniversary was yesterday. We were going to record a Bright Hearth, and then we discovered the jetted tub, the 1989 jetted tub in our
actually,
bathroom. We're not recording.
It was actually Winnie's toe that threw us.
Oh, that's what it was.
That's what you were like. There's too much going on. We can't do this.
She
tonight.
like skinned her whole toe, and I had to put it back together.
I thought her toe was going to fall off.
It was bad.
It was pretty.
I had to do some surgery. But we were going to do an anniversary episode on the day of our anniversary, which is funny, like recording a Bright Hearth on your
I'm glad we
anniversary.
didn't though.
But we instead had Prosecco and then said we'd do it today. So here we are, 13 years in one day. And we just wanted to talk just kind of freely about some of the biggest things that we've learned so far in marriage. Because I feel like there's been so much when I look back on those first months and years. And it was always good. It's always been really good.
I have a hard time thinking of regrets, actually.
Yeah, I don't actually think of many like regrets, but I do think of maturing and lessons and like putting your finger on things and going, oh,
Yeah, that's a good way to put
that's
it, I
what
guess.
that is. That's what it is. That's
Okay.
what it is. So let's just start. Well, maybe you want to throw anything out there? I've got some ideas, but what have been some of the big things that feel like you've learned or put your finger on for Christian marriage, building a fruitful, productive household, from being broke and 19 and 20, like
Never
young
knew we
ministry
were
life.
broke.
You never knew we were broke?
Never knew we were broke.
Expand on that.
I just always wanted to be with you, so I didn't really care or know. Maybe for better or for worse because of how young I was, but I'm also just thankful I never had charge of finances. So,
and we were, by God's providence, like we were never like, oh, we have $20,000 of credit card debt. We've never had credit card debt our whole marriage,
and we've never had
nothing like that.
Never had student loans, which I didn't realize until recently how much that probably has benefited us.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. So many folks that come into church or that we meet are like, oh, yeah, she had $100,000 of student loan debt. I had $170,000.
Yeah.
We're still paying them off 13, 15 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, though. Not just the finance thing, but you said that for better or for worse, that when we got married, both of us, deep in our souls, we wanted to be together and build a home. And we didn't care if we made $20,000 a year. We didn't care if we had fancy cars.
And we can't necessarily, this isn't the place to go into all the details for why that was.
Yeah.
Just know it wasn't easy for us to get.
No, it was a very difficult road.
It was a challenge.
It was.
To get married.
Yeah, to even get there. Not because we were like fighting or anything, but just circumstantially. But it was what I always like when I'm talking to young couples considering marriage, or parents with kids like coming into that age. One of the most important things that I've learned in our own marriage and also in the course of ministry is that the decision on who to marry is monumental.
Yeah.
And you need to address it soberly. You need to be willing to walk away before the wedding day if you don't think that this person, if you haven't soberly assessed with counsel and said, this is the person who my soul loves, and I am going to marry them, and I don't care if we're rich or poor, I don't care. I want to be with them, and I know they're going to do good to me.
Yeah.
And I knew that. I felt that. I was like, Lexi's going to do me good.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking was just how important it is to look for work ethic, even from a young age. Like I don't think it should be normative unless you're like in some sort of crazy high stress college to just settle just because you're in college and like, I'm just going to be, I don't know, a barista or something. I mean, I get that there are people who do that, but you never have had one job. Ever since I've known you, you've had multiple jobs, and that really does reflect in how you live your life today. Mm-hmm. And now there have been seasons where you've had to learn to not work so much.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I knew you were going places, and I wanted to go with you places. I didn't see that in a lot of the other guys around us, though, who were just okay for settling for just a job to get by, or, not, or like living on student loans instead of working when they could have been working. They're only taking 16 credit hours, and they you have all the time in the world when you're only taking 16 credit hours. You don't believe it.
With no kids, come on.
I just really knew from a really early age, like he's going someplace. He's going to do something with his life. And I want to be there washing his socks.
I felt that about you. I was like, she wants to be my wife. She wants to be the mother of my children.
And I know that's
she wants to build a house.
I know it is somewhat unique. Like certain people just have an older soul about them. I understand that. But these are still qualities that can be cultivated, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like if you are young right now and you're like, oh, that's not me, you can become that person though.
Totally. And it doesn't have to just be like you felt and you knew what vocationally that I was called to ministry, that I wanted to do these things, and that I was convinced that this is what the Lord had for us and for me. But this can be true and should be true of whomever you marry in their vocation. Yes. Ladies, you should be thinking, if you're considering marrying a man, and you're like, what is his thing? What's his? And it doesn't have to be that he knows exactly the one job he's going to work till he dies. That's not what I mean. But he should know, like, my thing is I'm a hard worker, and I'm going to, whatever it takes, I'm going to start a business and provide for my family. I'm going to work a trade. I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a soldier. I'm going to be whatever it is. And that man has the virtue that he is going to put his back into it, and he is going to make sure that he provides, and that you would delight to be the wife of a man doing that and build that house.
Yeah. Yep.
So going into it, I think that's hugely important. And we were very different then from what we are now. Like, we've grown in so many different ways and learned so many things and had so many moments of, like, theological growth and clarity and cultural growth and clarity.
I think something...
we were the same people there at the beginning. Something
that was extremely shaping for me as a young wife was having our pastor within 18 months of marriage commit adultery.
Who married us.
That was extremely, like, earth-shattering for me.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful, though, now that it happened when it did, instead of either not happening and me not learning those lessons, or happening later and me living all those years in, like, naivety. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a huge moment, I think, for us both. In one sense, because it changed from vocationally, my plan being, I've been ordained under this ministry. I was an ordained pastor at that point.
We were leaving,
and I was going to take probably a few years to 5 years to train and learn from this older, more seasoned pastor who was very fruitful in the ministry. And
that's debatable.
And then go out. I mean, but he'd been pastored really well. Church that he pastored in Idaho did really well. Came here for the context that we were in. I'm describing how I saw it then.
Yeah, it's true.
Looking back, the philosophy of ministry, lots of things changed. But Calvary Chapel pastor, he was great as a Calvary Chapel pastor for what Calvary Chapel was trying to do. To is all I mean. But all of a sudden, it was like, oh, now it's there's a lot of hurt sheep, and you're a pastor, dude. Like, you may be young, but you're not leaving. Like, you're here now, and you're not going to go church plant, and that's real sexy. Like, we're going to go church plant. It's like, instead.
I found out I was pregnant with our first the week that happened.
Very right then.
So it was a lot of maturing. It was like the true honeymoon stage of our marriage was over.
Yeah.
And now I had to figure out whether or not I trusted my husband, because the man in ministry I trusted the most had fallen.
Yeah. And it was a big watershed for
huge.
Us. It was also I was so early in ministry, but the lessons of the integrity piece, like not trusting yourself, and so having other strong elders around you,
yes,
and also having, like, I'm not going to do I'm not going to counsel a woman alone. I'm not going to trust myself. I'm also not going to trust other people.
Yeah,
who aren't, like, I'm not going to trust.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
So there were lessons there that I think bore really good fruit in our church, in the culture that we then sought to build.
Yes.
Out of it. It was very painful. But yeah, that was definitely huge.
I don't want anyone to go through that.
No. And it was.
But yeah, that was very shaping for our marriage, for sure.
Yeah. And you know what? Part of that too was, at that time, our pastor had been an up and comer in the world of the church. Mm-hmm. Like, this was, like, you have to think back, if you guys were around in the Young Restless Reformed.
Blogging was still a big thing. Pretty new still.
Peak Mars Hill, peak Resurgence, peak Relit, peak Mark Driscoll.
Gospel Coalition.
Peak Gospel Coalition. And
Siren
here my
God.
pastor was, like, becoming the president of a church planting network.
I was one of the first women writers for their website, which was a huge deal.
He was founding this new website, big blogger for the website, like getting invites to conferences. Oh, hey, will you come overseas to this other country and talk about missions? Will you talk about church planting? You're planning this really fast growing church in a hard place like Utah. So there was all of this kind of, like, micro niche celebrity kind of culture, and
for sure.
Seeing it from the inside, I would go with him. I'd see some of this stuff, but then also seeing the other side of it, with disqualification and the sins that were growing up, all of that was really formative.
Yeah, and on the other side of it, I'm really grateful for because I think of like our relationship with the Farleys after that was so just such a godsend through that time of eventually within a few short years, you became the lead pastor directly as a result of that. And just having them as mentors, honestly, I mean, you were the lead pastor, but Joe and Jen were very formative in our marriage.
Yeah. Joe now is an elder at Christ Church with Doug Wilson, but he was and he had moved there for work. He didn't move. He didn't say, "Hey guys, I'm going to go to the cool Doug Wilson church." He really moved for work but great guy, really stable family.
Yes.
Godly, multi-generational Christians with ministry family experience.
Yes.
And that also was another big early on through that whole thing in our marriage and also in the ministry. It was a big learning point, or what's the word I'm looking like lesson of just learning that you need to, as a leader, you have to be humble and be able to point right at the things that you're not good at, and then say, I need somebody who is good at that, and I actually just need to say, come help me. And Joe is one of those guys.
Yeah.
Where Joe had, and there were other elders as well throughout the history of the church. There's been other elders as well, to avoid building a culture where I was like the single point of failure for everything in the church. And instead, over time, the Lord's been kind in areas where I have almost no gifting whatsoever pastorally, other people who have that gifting. And then there are areas where I have gifting, and then I'm free to do those things. Yeah. And put my hand to the plow of those things. And that's what the Lord does. He gives different gifts and measures of faith and talent, and then he deploys you. And honestly, this is one of the things I jotted down about marriage in general, that I think it was one of those putting my finger on it things this week, because I haven't ever thought this thought really all the way through until today, that so much of early marriage was learning how to work together in that way that I just described in ministry, but work together as a family, not compete with each other.
I didn't feel competitive. Did you feel
competitive?
Men
are competitive. So that's how I would frame it.
Okay.
You'd probably frame it more along the lines of figuring out where your duties were and doing those, and me figuring out where my duties were. But I think this is a common thing, that marriages can be competitive. You see it when people are like talking in a group, and a husband and wife in there, and they're telling a story, and they're each interrupting each other and trying to get the glory, trying to tell that's a microcosm of competition in marriage. Instead of viewing like my greatest goal should be that you would become the most glorious woman and homemaker and wife and mother possible. And your goal really should be that I would become the most glorious man and whatever my vocation happens to be. And
you are the most glorious man.
Thanks, babe. You're sweet.
As I'm listening to you talk about this, it's making me realize part of the secret sauce for me with all of this, because I agree with what you're saying, is that I have simplified things instead of overcomplicating and overthinking things.
Yeah.
Like my duties are simpler because I know how clear-cut yours are and how clear-cut mine are. And I'm not discontent then, and I'm not fussy about you not doing my duties or me wanting to do your duties. Yeah. It is how it is. And when you live within reality, it's crazy how your ordered life is more beautiful than a disordered life.
Totally. And it's like, sometimes you see this fighting where it's like, man, he just needs to do more chores around the house or something like that. And it's not that he shouldn't do chores and help. I hope that I help with chores and things around the house. But I'm genuinely not trying to, like in our household, I don't think of it as like 50-50. I think of it as 100-100.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I have vocation and there's overlap.
Yeah.
Because we both care for this home and this household and these people. But I have 100% focus on 100% of my duties, and you have 100% focus on 100% of your duties. And getting clear on this sounds so simple, but so many marriages are struggling because they're simply not clear on their duties. They don't know what success even looks like, right? Where they're not meditating deeply on the biblical data as a woman, saying, okay, the Bible's given me not like six, it hasn't given me like a 6-volume set of detailed instructions on how to keep a house, but it's given me a good chunk of passages,
generalities
to meditate on.
Yeah.
And if they're not that long, it actually means that, like, if there's not very many by volume, that actually means the ones that are there are really important.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
So a lot of women aren't thinking like, wait, but what does it really mean to respect my husband? Because Paul says, see that you respect your husband. What does it really mean to be a keeper at home?
And I think we've said this a lot. We are cultural maximalists, especially when it comes to gendered piety.
Yeah.
So I'm not just thinking the basics. You're not just thinking the basics. I'm thinking the basics all the way to the bottom.
Yes. The simple central principles lived out all the way.
And that was a big changing point for me. I don't know where I could put my finger on it. I'd probably say sometime after my second was born, where I stopped living for the pragmatism. Mm-hmm. Like, we'll just do the basics because that's most practical. It's as efficient as possible. We'll stick to the schedule. I stopped all that, and that's when I found more joy.
Yeah, and man, this has so much import because I think about, take something like respect of a husband from a wife, for a wife thinking this through. It's really easy to do a paragraph of reflection on that and then move on. But actually, you should be thinking, okay, respect my husband. What does that look like in supporting him in his vocation? Okay, that's one thing. And then you could do some thinking. What would it look like to do that as the mother of his children, respecting my husband? Oh, there's actually a lot there. Okay. What would it look like for me to respect my husband as a man, like maybe sexually? What would it look like to respect my husband in the way that I speak? What would it look like to respect my husband in the way that you can go all the way, and a husband can do this. What would it look like for me to cherish my wife in our home? What would it look like for me to cherish her with the kids? And he can go down this whole thing. And instead of trying to skip across from like shiny object to shiny object, what's the next marriage book? What's the next thing I can read? What's the next course I could do? Well, Paul said, husbands, love your wives, nourish and cherish them. Paul said, wives, see that you respect your husband. And I feel like the better and sweeter our marriage has gotten, and it does every year, it's not because of some new thing that we figured out.
No, that's true.
It's because of going deeper on those just central, ordinary, boring things.
Yeah, it's true.
Because I was looking at my list, I wrote down here, and not competing, but working together. And I was thinking of, there was one time when I was so offended. I was so annoyed. It wasn't at you. It was at, we were a part of this church thing. And it was one of those, it was like peak woke or early peak woke. The big thing was everyone was looking for more minority and women writers and everything and all this stuff. And so at that point, I had been a pastor for some years and was doing, all the pastor stuff. And I wrote and I did all these things. And we got in this.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say.
And everybody in the leadership was like clamoring
I
to
remember
be like,
this.
oh, Mrs. Sauvé, would you like to write for us? Would you like to, could you teach? Could you do a teaching? Could you write a book for us, actually?
Okay.
And I was
Have we told this story? Have we told the
remember.
story of what happened?
No, go ahead, tell it. Because I remember, and I wasn't annoyed at you at all. I was like, yeah, Lexy has lots of hence this podcast is a lot of Lexy's gifts in being able to do Titus 2 stuff.
Yeah.
But they wanted way more than that. They wanted
really
you to be a
about
Jen.
What I've done writing wise.
They wanted you to be a Jen Wilkin. That's what it was.
For their
thing.
For their thing, yeah.
They were like, oh, look, young, attractive pastor's wife who can write, and
but clearly,
she could be our Jen Wilkin.
The thing is, it was purely because I was a woman. Because it was very obvious that I was, if you looked at any of what I wrote, that I was fans of the Wilsons. We'll start there, okay?
Yeah.
So they had me
that was right.
2 different books that I was supposed to write. One was kind of supposed to be a Rosaria Butterfield response to her deathbed hospitality book that's, I can't remember what it's called right now. Anyways, and then the second one was supposed to be on feasting and Sabbath. And I got the contract came through. I was assigned my publisher. And then they asked me to put together a table of contents and a summary of the book. And they wanted a list of sources that I was using for the book content. Yeah. Which a lot of it was being drawn from the Wilsons. And it was shortly after that I got an email basically saying, we're sorry, we've decided to take this project a different direction.
In a different direction.
We no longer need you to be writing for us. Yeah. And I was like, oh, really?
So this was years ago. And since then, we've worked out more principles and gotten even more particular on parts of that we thought at the time, something's wrong with this. And now we're like, oh, yeah, read Zachary Garris's book. It's there are domains and realms like Bright Hearth here where we talk together, and there's lots of Titus 2 stuff. But I have no interest, and wouldn't have even then. There's no way that I would have let you become a Jen Wilkin.
No,
Absolutely
well, we
not.
already knew. Because in real life, Jen Wilkin had a real conversation with Lexy
with us,
where she told me I needed to put my kids in a form of daycare so that I could be present at the church and work more at the church. And we had already talked about like, no, this is where the old soul comes in. I will forever want to just sit in my bed next to my husband at night and read books on the couch all day. I don't want to go be at the church all day. By nature, that's not something I want to do. But we had already decided like, no, we're not doing that though.
Jen told me that I should start having women at our elders meetings.
Yeah. Really bad advice.
It was all really terrible advice. And even then it was like, But now I'm like, oh yeah, thank you, Lord, for protecting us from all that. We very shortly after that left this whole thing and said, we're not doing that anymore. It was when Mike Cosper took over.
And it really was when that experience, because I had actually even made them an annotated bibliography of women's ministry resources. It was very long that I could so that they could hand it to any woman and say, here's a great list of women's resources. So I had spent a lot of time working on projects for them. And then for them to just nix it all, it made me realize the necessity of own spaces is what it made me realize.
Oh boy. Yep. So that there have been things like that through, like one of the reasons why when we talk about how we talk so much about sexed piety, about how men and women ought to work together.
Did I say gendered piety earlier?
Yeah, it's okay. People know what you meant. We don't say gender though. Gender's
no, I don't
made
like
up.
that.
But the reason we talk so much about this stuff is because even through our marriage and through our experiences navigating some of these waters of shifting tumultuous church times, we walked through and saw the fruit. A lot of this isn't theoretical. It's like, oh, I see what happens in churches when the elders' wives are quasi-elders. It's really bad.
Or
it's emotionally damaging.
Women get together to only study the Bible. Like, people think, oh, this is so harmless. Why? You just want women to be dumb. You don't want them to know how to exegete scripture. And it's like, no, but I posted a long thing on Twitter about this recently. Theology comes out of our fingertips. There's no way for it to not get feet on the grounds. Yeah. It's supposed to be that way by nature. That's not a bad thing. But then when you have women doing that together all the time in different households, you start to play pope with one another. And I've seen it, and I've counseled these women. I've been in these Bible studies. We've kicked these women out of the church. Like, these women...
They usually kick themselves out.
That's true. That is true. These women wreck households because of this. It's not a light issue to just say, let's freely let women study and interpret scripture in groups on their own. That's not... There's protection there for a reason.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's positive instruction in Scripture.
Yes.
That where Paul tells you and Peter tells you, like, how he wants the general theological instruction to work in a church. Yeah. And at no point would you walk away from that instruction, even in a passage like Titus 2, and think to yourself, what Paul and Peter and the apostles and the Lord Jesus wants is for there to be a class of professional lady theologians in the church that primarily instructs the women in doctrine. Instead, you would actually come away with fairly countercultural things, even in our circles, of like,
it's true.
Hey, ladies, if you have a question in church, keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
And ask your husband when you get home.
You don't need to ask questions in Sunday school.
How shocking or how, what's the word, countercultural, I guess, would it be for someone just straightforwardly, even kindly to say, for a husband to tell his wife, basically, you keep asking all these questions in the church, but can you please ask me first?
Well, yeah, because that's the thing is, your pastor says one thing, but what does your husband think? And again, to me, it comes back to women are to incarnate truth. That's what our job is. There's no way to do this without practically doing it. So if your pastor is saying something, but your husband doesn't like it, you still have to go back to him and figure out what he thinks anyways.
You've got to figure it out with your husband and then work together and work on out. And so women need to know doctrine. Women need to be good theologians. Women need to be clear thinkers. They need to be equipped, and they in Ephesians.
They should know
4,
how to exegete Scripture.
They absolutely need to be able to exegete Scripture. They need to be what Paul talks about when he says that in Ephesians 4, we need to grow to mature manhood so that we're not tossed to and fro by every wind and wave of doctrine and the cunning and deceit of men. So women absolutely need to have all that discernment and education and training and all of that. But the way that it happens is important.
Yes.
And we're not left in the dark, biblically speaking, about the way that it ought to generally happen.
Yeah.
So a lot of the reasons that we don't just love people being annoyed with us on the internet. That's not why we talk about a lot of this stuff, but because it's not only important and central, but it's things that we've walked through ourselves. And it's also one of the key points of attack today.
Yeah.
That's really weakening and damaging the church, the state, and also many, many homes and families. So in our marriage, very particularly, this is one of the lessons that I think we've grown more and more convinced of and learned over the years is we need to know our lanes.
Yeah.
And we need to obey the Lord in those. And by the way, that's enough work for your whole life. Without focusing over much on everybody, on the other person doing all their jobs all the time. I'm going to talk about leadership in a minute, but you focusing as a wife and you focusing as a husband, 90% of your effort on doing your vocational duty with joy and gladness and serving and loving, that is the thing that's going to bear fruit in your marriage.
Yeah.
And then also, of course, we've talked about this. We've talked about correcting a husband's correcting a wife. And you can see a podcast, I think it's called Correcting Your Wife. We've talked about how a wife can bring wise appeal and talk to her husband when there's issues and how she can be a help to him in that way. We've talked about all of that before. But that's the 10%. Like 90% of your effort really is on doing your duty. Here at Bright Hearth, we're all about helping you not turn into a girl if you're a boy, or into a boy if you're a girl. You know what might be doing that to you? The soap in your shower. And so we are pleased to introduce you to IndigoSundrySoap.com, link in the description, of course, who can provide you with soaps and more without any of the nasty stuff. And because they love you, they're giving you a discount code, guys. So use code, all caps, Bright Hearth for 10% off your whole order. Support this great Christian company and support Bright Hearth Podcast at the same time. Check them out at IndigoSundrySoap.com. And of course, that link is in the description. Here at Bright Hearth, we love to support Christian family businesses that are doing great work, which is why we're so happy to commend to you A Well-Worn Story. A Well-Worn Story is a sewing studio based in New Glarus, Wisconsin, and they're making handcrafted leather and canvas goods. It's run by a husband and wife team, and they focus on making beautiful products from natural, high-quality materials that only get better with age, telling your unique story. Made in rural America, this Christian family business makes high-quality handcrafted leather and canvas bags, belts, and wallets, and these are heirloom quality, stuff that you can hand down to your next generation. You can order online at www.awellwornstory.com and use the discount code BRIGHTHEARTH, all caps, no spaces, to save 10% on any order. Related to that, this is another thing that I wrote down because it's been central, is just from year 0 of marriage to year 13, I'm sure I'll feel like this even more at year 25, Lord willing, and year 30. But learning what it actually means to lead in the home has been really important.
What are some really, like, 2 specific things that you've changed that you do now that you didn't do before?
Like, I think it's a general practice more. It's about a disposition more than a single conversation or like giving orders or things like that. But to me, like centrally, leading primarily meant not being passive. So early.
Before, that's what it primarily meant to you?
No, that's what it means now.
Oh,
not
okay.
being passive is the heart of leading. It's active. It's responsibility taking. It's basically a leader doesn't wait until someone else goes and fixes a problem.
Yeah.
A leader just goes and fixes it or deploys people to fix it and figures out who is the person who should be fixing this. Because leaders shouldn't do everything. Like, you're actually taking away from the people you're leading if you just do everything. But as a husband, my mindset shift had to grow from being a 20-year-old who knew very little. When we first got married, the instinct of, there's a problem, I need to go solve it. I don't need my dad to go solve it. I don't need my wife to solve it. In fact, she needs me to even just say, okay, this is what the plan is for our family. Like, this is what we need to do in this situation. I noticed this might be your personality. It might be something that all women struggle with. I don't know to what degree because I've only been married to one woman. But I noticed that if I let you make a lot of decisions in a row, it makes you less pleasant and less happy. If you are required to make and I'm even talking practically like in a day, like a Saturday off. If I just sit back and say, what do you think we should do next, babe? It didn't make you happy. And I don't just want to make you happy, but I want to make but it really is a barometer to go, oh, I was being passive. I was making her make all the decisions.
Yeah.
You make decisions, but it's much better if I can pick which decisions I want you to make and be like, I'm going to make 10 decisions. Some of them you're not even going to know about because I'm going to be active. And then the decisions you need to make are going to be the ones that are in your vocation and domain.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to trust you in those.
Yeah.
Like what paint to paint the wall, whatever. Like you put the paint up, I'll paint it whatever you want. With a lot of homeschool stuff, I was present, but also I'm not going to be the one teaching it every day.
Yeah.
So when there's a math curriculum where you're like, I want to switch, I trust you. You're my chief deputy. So that's one example of just making more decisions quicker, being active. Do you know what I mean about that?
Yeah, you definitely are way better at that. Yeah, you're way better at that.
Yeah, I was much more passive early in our marriage.
And we just have, I think part of it too is we have more children and the dynamic just gets more, with every child, there's more, a new layer of details that people have to stay on top of. And so I think part of this is just the nature of a family maturing and needing to do that.
Yeah.
You've had more practice by the nature of how many children we have.
Yeah.
But you definitely, I agree that I am that way and you are that way, yes.
Even just seeing in other family dynamics, in other families or whatever, when a husband is not active, but when he leaves everybody else to make the decisions, even if he's a good guy, even if he's has a good attitude and kind and has a lot of good qualities, if one of the aspects of his character or disposition is that he tends to be passive or just let other people do, make the call on everything, that pretty soon in the home, functionally what happens is that his wife usually is the one leading.
Yeah.
And it can be...
whether or not she even wants to be doing that.
Right. And that can be really bad. Like, really bad.
Yeah.
So that goes for everything from, steering with correcting things that are going wrong, but also just, making positive decisions, planning and moving forward. That's really important.
Even with this house, even with buying a house, you had just trusted me, said, whatever you want, here's your price range, go for it. And I was I not? I was frustrated and stressed.
Yeah. You were, it was because I knew that I can be happy and content in most kind of spaces. It would be
we really should talk about this at
it's
another
right
time,
at the heart of your vocation.
That's why, is because you were you need to figure out what you need to make your job more functional for you.
I just said in this thing, but even that, I was making a decision. I was saying,
yes,
this is how I will buy you a house if I can, Lord willing. This is how much I think I can pay for that house. So go here. I will send you stuff. Hey, what about this one?
But that was not enough for me. So I told you after weeks of not telling you, I was like, I am annoyed that I don't have any barriers. It's weird to me. I've created a list based on these really particular things from the Christopher Alexander books that I love about a house, that I think would serve us really well, that I would desire to see with, our kids and grandkids. Those are the boundaries that I'm praying through, that the Lord would put on a house for us, because it was too freeing for me. I needed to be hemmed in a little bit more. And that's when things finally felt like, okay, the Lord is going to provide this. I know he is.
And that was you making the decision.
Yeah, it was.
You actually had to come up with a list of things in a house that you wanted.
Yeah.
You were doing exactly what I asked you to do.
That's true.
It was just you were experiencing the difficulty of being the one who's and you weren't going to call the shot too. It wasn't like
that
obviously
was the thing.
I'm going to come look at the house.
Yes, I wanted you to call the shot. I didn't want to be the one. I didn't want to feel like it was all on me. So if I turned it over in prayer, it was like, well, the Lord provided it. So
yes,
clearly this is what we need to do.
There's no way I thought that this house existed in August.
No, it's
I was like,
true.
So the Lord provided. But it was a call where it was actively leading in that situation, in my estimate, was I actually need to not meddle because I am assertive.
Yeah.
And I will just make the decision because I've learned to just make the decision.
Yeah.
But I've also learned in this particular thing that if I just make the decision on a knee-jerk, okay, this looks good to me,
I think you
it
have
won't be ideal.
done a really good job, too, of learning to not meddle in the house stuff as much.
Yeah, I don't
meddle. Meddle isn't the word.
I just needed to recognize that there were aspects of it that weren't my domain primarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that I wasn't the one doing certain things. It would be like, for example.
Meddling is not the word.
No, it's not meddling. It's, again, back to the original. This is really the key lesson of marriage so far. It's like the core things, listen to what the Bible says about the core things, and then also listen to what it says about your domain. It would be like if you thought that the way that I preached on Sunday was primarily your thing. And you were constantly trying to give me critical feedback on sermons. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't actually be that helpful. It would actually just hurt my feelings. Because I have people that give me feedback on sermons, other pastors, and I ask people, and because they're people that I don't need, like they're not my wife, right? So Lexy could tell me that a sermon thing she didn't understand somewhere. She thought I didn't preach a good sermon. She never does, but I think you could do that. It'd be fine. But if every week you were like, man, I really think you should have structured like point 4, like it was kind of, you didn't really repeat the thesis clearly, it would just really annoy me. And so, like, why would I tell you where to put the dishes in the cabinets? I put them wherever you want. I'll learn where they are. Try not to move them around too much because then I won't know where they are.
I think you are so good at laughing at my personality too.
It's because I like you.
I don't. But that's the thing is, I always say this to you, I'm like, I really feel bad for husbands and wives who don't like each other.
Yeah.
Because they can't laugh about those things. I know the way I load the dishwasher makes no sense to you. I get that. Okay.
Because when I go to do it, I rearrange the whole thing and then I hit go.
And then my mom is here and she does it a third way that I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
You're like,
either.
What's wrong with you?
But Charity looks at that and can laugh and find the charm in it.
Yes, like this is another thing I wrote down.
This is a very basic thing that you must learn as a mother and as a wife.
Like understanding that there's 2 aspects of this. One is covering genuine offenses,
yeah,
where there are things that the person, and when I say offense, we don't necessarily mean like a really big sin.
No,
I mean like something that offended you, and that maybe there really was a deficiency
you could be provoked
in
to
them
sin.
Paying attention and being thoughtful. But they didn't like maliciously do something, but they could have been more thoughtful, whatever, Covering offenses is 90% of peace in marriage. Like literally, and then also the part B of that is you realize that a lot of the things that were offenses is because you were just being particular. And you weren't seeing the charm in differentness because your wife is different from you. Your husband's different from you. You were actually just being easily provoked.
Yeah.
And if you're easily annoyed, you're going to be annoyed. That's the thing. Even when people are not doing anything wrong, if you're easily annoyed at work, at home, with your kids, this is something almost all of us can. I'm still working on it, like being too easily annoyed with certain types of things in my life. One of them is people leaving doors open. Drives me absolute, and I mean like to the outside in the summer in Utah, drives me absolutely nuts. And it annoys me. And I need to be less annoyed by that than I currently am. So that's a project. That's a little me project. But marriage is impossible if you're going to be annoyed all the time, don't get married. Be annoyed alone. But really repent is what I'm saying.
Yep.
So yeah, we've waxed pretty long here. There's so much more we've been married for 13 years. We could talk for a long, long time about all the fun we've had and all the things we've learned. But for me, and I'll sum it up and then last words from you. Just if I could tell whether you've been married whether you're looking at getting married or you've been married for a year, been married for 50 years, I think this is relevant, is you have to keep your eye on those central things that the scriptures teach for you. What did Paul say husbands should be like and should do? What did Peter say that wives should be like and should do? And then think through the different aspects of your life with your kids and your home and sexually and your food and in your everything you do. And think of how those there's very few of them, like there's not a lot, But think about how they would apply to all those different aspects and do an inventory. How am I doing? I guarantee you that when you do that and in faith, you say, oh, I really do have some repenting and some maturing to do there, then do the work and actually do it.
Yeah. When you were talking about this earlier, it reminded me of Misty's vocation statements.
Misty Winkler.
Yeah. Where she has you like pick 3 to 5 vocations. So like mother, Christian, educator, wife. And then within each vocation, you pick an adjective that you want to be in that vocation, like a cheerful wife. And then you pick a habit that you need to implement in order to become that.
That's so good.
And it's so helpful and actionable because I think, yes, repentance is the first thing. But then it's like, well, where do I go from here?
Yeah, what does it actually look like?
I think it's important for people to then put adjectives to what they want to be so they can figure out what is the habit to get there then. And let's start doing that.
Yeah, and if you're feeling really brave, ask your spouse.
Yeah.
For how you could improve in some specific area. Hey, just want, like, is there anything in terms of the marriage bed that would serve you? Is there anything in terms of how I talk to you that would improve, that would make, and then you can't be offended if they actually give you something. You can't be like, how dare you? I have 17 reasons why you're wrong. And their thing was that you were argumentative. That would.
Wow, imagine that.
They
imagine
would just
that
look,
scenario
they would just look at you and they'd be like, really? I'm not argumentative, so. I could give you a 20-point list of why I'm not argumentative. No, I am argumentative. But
you're not in marriage.
I'm opinionated is probably a way to put it.
Opinionated. Well, I'm opinionated too.
Let me put it as a virtue. I have strong convictions.
I'm well educated.
I'm well educated. I have strong convictions and I'm well educated. So they're good convictions.
Wow.
Guys, thanks for listening. Hey, pick up Zach's book. It's so good. I'm going to read
music.
it again.
I love Ray's music.
Ray, who
you played me some more of it the other day, and I was like, "What? This is even better than the last thing I heard."
Speaking of new things, Ray Buckner, who does sound for a lot of our podcasts, he edits Bright Hearth. He's the Ray we're always talking to in King's Hall and Bright Hearth. Like, Ray, please edit that out. Ray is also a longtime musician and producer, so he's done a lot of touring, production work. He helps me. He produces my catechism songs now. And he just released an EP with us at New Christian Press. Good. Our music imprint is called Talking Beast Records, where I released my music so far. And now we have a new sound out of Talking Beast Records.
It's great.
It's called Out of the Graves is the name of the artist. So it's not Ray Buckner, but it's Out of the Graves. And the EP is called The Waiting World. My favorite song is Hide Not.
What was that one you were playing the other day when I asked you, is this Ray?
It's the title track. I think that's The Waiting World.
Okay.
Which is also, they're all, honestly, all the songs are really good.
Really good, yeah.
He did everything on them. He played all the instruments, produced, sang, did it all. And the way that I would describe it in, like, brief would be post-mill rock and roll.
The way I described it to him.
Lexy's description was longer and more niche, but really good. What did you say?
I said it's like the spill canvas and City and Color had a Christian baby that they baptized.
So funny. And what's funny is that, like, nobody probably even knows who the Spill Canvas are, do you think?
Some people did on Twitter. Ray was the only other person aside from you when I met him in real life, had a City and Color shirt on. I was like, you know City and Color?
Neither of those are Christians, by the way.
No, they're not.
Like,
that's why
totally
I said had a
Christians.
Christian baby that was baptized.
Yeah, we listened to these back in, like, junior high. Self-conclusion.
Yeah. I think people know Spill Canvas.
You see, the thing is that you never
The thing is, people our age all went to high school and junior high the same time we did. So
actually,
it was
a lot
the
of you
music
probably
that
know.
was popular.
Totally. You guys, we listened to all those.
We love that stuff.
So check out Out of the Graves, too. Check out Zach's book. Get tickets for next year's conference. Again, I'm telling you this because the early birds get the worm. Like, we give way better pricing the earlier that you buy tickets because it helps us actually know what venue we need and plan and all that.
We could have probably used a bigger venue this
year.
And,
pay for things ahead of time. So, because it costs an unbelievable amount of money to put on a conference for 1,000+ people. Like, we had a last minute this year where the sound system, the whole sound system that we thought was going to work at the venue was, like, turned out to be terrible. So we had to, with like 4 days of notice, rent a sound system for a 1,300-seat auditorium. And let me just tell you that renting a sound system for a 1,300-seat auditorium, it's not cheap. So many of your tickets went to pay for the sound system.
So you could hear.
So that you could hear. So grab tickets, make plans, come on out. The thing about Ogden is that it's big enough as an area that there's lots of Airbnbs, lots of hotels and things like that. So come hang out. Plan to stay through Sunday if you're able to, and you come next year. And because it's so fun to have everybody at church and worship together, and you get a little bit of a taste of how we worship, which I think if you've never experienced it, the singing and the liturgy, I think you'll enjoy it and be built up through it. So thanks for listening, guys, to this episode of Bright Hearth. Thanks for hanging in there while we moved and put on a conference. We're back to our regular schedule, so we'll be releasing every 2 weeks, and we'll catch you next time on Bright Hearth.